Assalamu alaikum fam, hope you're doing fantastic. So I finished this book, a treatise by Sheikh Muhammed ibn Abdul Wahhab, may Allah be pleased with him, the Four Principles of Shirk, the commentaries by Suhaib Sirajudin, and I must say, I feel like this book really made me understand just all the different aspects of what shirk is, and since I'm taking a class on the Middle Ages, and about the Christians and their pilgrimage, from Spain all the way to France, the compare and contrasting I can do in my essays is going to be just so beneficial, I gotta say. And one thing I learned in particular was that basically you have different types of tawheed. So let's go over here. So here it is. So the Tawheed in Allah's Lordship, Tawheed in Allah's names and attributes, and Tawheed in Allah's worship. So this is something that I've read repeatedly in the other books, but really honing in on how you do that has really helped my brain, because since this treatise is about shirk, it just kind of really iterates how if you worship a human being or an object, or you invoke in the name of anything other than Allah, you dedicate something in worship to anything other than Allah, you have committed shirk, according to the author, right? This made a lot of sense to me, because as you study different religions, which is what I love doing, you can see like all the differences, and noticing the differences and comparing and contrasting them. As a theologian, historian, anthropologically, it really helps me to understand like what my duty is as a person of knowledge, and it's just really fantastic. So again, there were just things like you are to submit only to Allah, you trust only in Allah, you fear only Allah, you affirm Allah's names and attributes without negating them or delving into them or likening them to creation, and all help comes from Allah. And the very interesting point about not likening Allah's names and attributes to creation because of the human mind and heart being limited, I found that kind of interesting, because it's like you're just supposed to take the apparent literal meaning and not twist it into something else. And I was like, that's really interesting, because I started thinking like, how would I explain a PlayStation and like what I'm doing in a video game to like a bug, They're not going to understand what's going on. They have their own consciousness unique to their specificness, and we are kind of like that, right? It's like we have this gift of knowledge, our brain's capacity, but at the same time, it's like whatever befits Allah's majesty concerning names and attributes makes a lot of sense, right? Well, for me personally, right? And so just having no partnership in lordship, it is seeking all sustenance from Allah, was really beneficial. So just, and no intercessors point. That was very helpful, because I thought that it's very easy in other religions to get these partnerships set up, right? And doing intentional or accidental acts of worships for something other than Allah. So again, that reiterates the Tawheed that it was mentioning on Tawheed and Lordship and worship and everything like that. And I was like, wow, that makes sense. Like, you should never call out to the Prophet, call out to a jinn, call out to a pious person, no going to a grave and invoking the dead to talk to Allah for you. But there was this distinction about intercession, which I thought you might think is kind of cool. So he had a point here how intercession means mediating for someone else to gain some benefit or ward off some harm. And so he said there's two types. There's prohibited, and then there is the permissible one. But the permissible one is like Allah has to be pleased with you, and it has to be like on the day of judgment. And it's basically both of you got to be good. And Allah still has to grant you the permission, right? He has to grant you the ability to intercede. You cannot just go up to Allah and say, hey, I'm going to do this. No, He has to give you the, moment to do it, and if you are allowed to intercede, it's a big honor. And if you're allowed to intercede for others on a day of judgment, that is like really good for you. And so the prohibited kind is just asking a creation, dead or alive, he contended, to help you. You can't do it because they don't have the power to help you, he argues, right? You need to realize, he contends, that they are in need of Allah. And if you're asking something that's in need of Allah, you have then messed up, because you have to go to Allah. Which is interesting, because this is like really helpful, because go directly to God, right? Don't ask someone to ask someone to ask someone. It's really interesting. And the point about going to the dead and saying, hey, intercede for me, is like, you can instead, from what I understood, was, oh Allah, please let so-and-so intercede for me. But you cannot say, oh so-and-so, tell Allah X, Y, and Z. And that was very unique, because I was like, that's quite interesting. And then there was, so Allah has to be pleased, he contended, and then you have to be given permission by Allah. So, and then he has a citation here of Quran, Al-Baqarah 255. So who can intercede with him without his permission? He has citations of hadith and Quran. And then what I noticed is, now that I'm getting more familiar with these different treatises and stuff, they have the Quran and Sunnah, and you can argue about if they're putting it towards how they want it or whatever. But I noticed these different scholars, different people, no matter if you like them or not, they compare everything to, like, they judge by the Quran and Sunnah, and they legislate from it, right? And he argued that if you legislate other than what has been laid down, you are then going off in a way that's not permissible. So, and then there was this point about worldly intercession, right? So you cannot do any justice or an oppression for someone, and it has to be a permissible halal way. So if you're asking, there was a cool example of, like, if you want to ask Allah for someone to get, admission to a university, that's not oppressing anyone if you're saying please let them in. But if you say put an application over others, then that becomes an act of, like, injustice, right? So you have to ask Allah to allow someone to be let in, but you don't then ask the Prophet to say, will you help this person get into a university? It's like purely asking everything for Allah, right? And he emphasizes the correct Aqidah and stuff. So it was very interesting, and I like the way that they end their book. Their Treatise book is like, you start to learn how they talk. So, like, I ask Allah, the Great, the Lord of the glorious throne, that he may grant me and you, the reader, to seek knowledge by following the footsteps of the pious predecessors. And I hope that those who benefit from this text will remember me in their prayers, and I ask Allah to forgive me for any of my shortcomings in this text, and to accept it and make this a means of closeness for you and for me towards beneficial knowledge that gets a person close to Allah. Ameen. So, and it's just very unique, And by the way, I'm a sucker for these bookmarks. It's like the pretty string, beautiful. I mean, just looks really great. I don't know, it's black and gold, really so visually pleasing, but very helpful. I mean, I hope I can use this in the essay I'm gonna write if we have to talk about the pilgrimages and relics, comparing Catholicism with the unique aspects of how they believed in relics and put actual relics and such in their cathedrals. So here, with this book, it'd be a great way for me to do a comparative analysis, and I bet my professor will be completely impressed. So, alhamdulillah, was excellent read. I do recommend you to read it. I learned a lot about Shirk, so definitely have some beneficial knowledge that I gained from it. Hope you have a great day, fam.